Hi, I'm in Castle Sforza here in Milan, the home of the Dukes of Milan. In 1498, Leonardo da Vinci completed some military motifs in a room here for Ludovico il Moro, who I guess was the Duke of Milan. Now, I think those are lost to history now, but nevertheless, Leonardo worked here. Now, in modern times, we value Leonardo as being a kind of a creative genius, and in fairness, he did think about things differently. And there are, I think, three things that we value that he left behind. One is, he left behind his notebooks. The second thing is, he asked interesting questions which developed interesting answers. And the third thing is that he was endlessly curious. So let's have a think about his notebooks first of all. If it hadn't been for his notebooks, we wouldn't really value Leonardo to quite the same degree, because many of his works of art were lost. He didn't finish a lot of stuff as well. I think there are probably only about 14 existing Leonardos in the world. But his notebooks reveal the mind of a genius, or the mind of someone who was endlessly curious. So, all my life I've kept notebooks. I still have the ones from my youth. And it's really interesting to look back and see that my ideas have developed, but often my ideas were similar. I've just developed them over time, and I think that's really interesting. And when we're working on mental health problems, one of the things that we're trying to do is to forget to have a problem. And when we forget to have a problem, what happens is that we often forget the journey we had to resolve the problem. So in a sense, the learnings that we've got can get lost as well. And I think there's real value in recording your journey. So keep a journal or a notebook. It will prove its worth many times over. The second thing is, Leonardo was endlessly curious. He was always asking really good questions. But let's just think about curiosity. Your brain creates all of the mental health problems that you have. Your brain basically does everything. And therefore, only your brain can resolve your mental health problems. Now, I know that sounds simple, right? Your brain creates your problems, therefore your brain has to resolve them. There isn't an alternative. I can't resolve your mental health problems for you. No one can. You can take a medication, of course. That typically doesn't resolve them, it just manages them. So, given that your brain creates your mental health problems, and your brain has to solve them, we have to figure out how to do something differently. Because if we do the same thing, we're likely to get the same outcome. So we have to figure out how to get your brain to do something different to solve your mental health problems. And I think we've got to start being curious. We've got to start being curious about what's going on in your brain when you're not paying attention. What's going on in your brain just below the surface? What's going on in your brain below your awareness? Develop a curiosity about that and write notes in your notebook, and you will eventually come to what Leonardo liked to think of as good questions. A good question has the potential to create a good answer. So I encourage my clients to say this, right? Why do I have to be anxious? Well, when I say, well, why do you have to be anxious? They go, well, actually, I don't have to be anxious. Yeah. Why do you have to be depressed? Well, the answer is, I don't have to be depressed. Well, you might have self-esteem problems, or you might think of yourself as a bit of a failure, but do you need to be depressed? No. Depression is something that is additional. Do you need to be depressed? No. Do you need to be anxious? No. Do you need to panic? No. Actually, asking a good question gives us a good answer. Do I need to be anxious? No. I am anxious. My brain's creating my anxiety, so what's going wrong? And then that gives us the opportunity to explore options to make changes that will give us good outcomes. So, 3 points from Leonardo. Keep a notebook or journal. Be endlessly curious. And learn to ask good questions about your own experience. And that way, you're bound to get a good outcome. I hope you found this interesting from Castle Sforza. Thanks for taking the time to watch and listen.